Hello, Channel Automation podcast listeners. Welcome back to another deep dive into the techniques that convert leads. I'm your host, Casey Arias, and I'm joined today by our local 5-9 and call center expert, Stephen White, and the big man himself, Vic Sun. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here and taking the time to talk to us. I wanted to ask today about sort of the marriage between good service and being able to have your agents work most effectively. So having both the agents and the customers being as happy as possible. So first I wanted to start with what's a really good way to set up your agents for success, and then we're going to go into a little bit more of how your callers can have the best experience.
Well, the best way to set up your agents for success, I would start with creating very well-defined documentation for your call center. And I'd say that's important just because when somebody is confused or unsure about what actions to take in a particular instance, it causes anxiety. And that's a kind of anxiety that leads to burnout. So if you're dealing with, a room full of people that are starting out for the first time, it's like you're playing a game. I think Vic uses this analogy quite a bit when we're talking to people. It's like you're playing a game. And in this game we're particularly playing, you have to have a set of rules. Otherwise, there's no game. You have to have rules in place. And if we're creating documentation for our company, it's like we're writing the rule book for this game. The rule book says, you have to, when you roll the dice and you get this number, you have to take this action. So when this event happens, this action has to be taken. Effective you are in creating these rules for your team so that they lead to success for the company, the more effective your call center will be. And that plays out over time. Of course, you have to there's a few things like, people will try to create their own rules. That's where you have, the managers come in. And I think that's a cool analogy for creating a call center where people have this kind of effectively following what needs to be done in order for everyone to succeed.
I agree with that. I think what I would make an adjustment on, the biggest mistake that I see with a lot of call centers, 5-9 setup, they set it up from the perspective of the organization and their goals based on, let's say, setting appointments, making sales. And that is a really big mistake, because what you should do is instead of having your goal that drives your strategy when you're setting up your 5-9 or your Ring Central or your dialer, you should look at empirical data as well as what your customers want in terms of their experience, right? So you look at it and you say, well, do people want me to call them because they came from a digital source, for example, or a lead generator that was produced online? Or do they want me to text, email, or chat with them instead of calling them? But they take the strategy of, oh, I've got a dialer. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call them all, and I'm going to call them as fast as possible. The big mistake now looming over them, other competitors are doing the same thing. They're all calling at the same time. They're all buying the same lead. They're all trying to speed to lead, connect with that person. And if this person was, for example, produced on, let's say, Facebook, that person doesn't want a phone call. They were on Facebook. They saw an ad. They saw a form. They saw a post. You know what they want? They want you to connect with them on Facebook. And so one of the things that we do at Channel Automation is we do have text, we do have email, we do have voice, right? But we have social, which other people don't have. So you have that extra layer of conversion that you go and say, I can now convert 24/7, number one, through our automation. So let's say you produce a lead at 12 midnight. You don't have to wait to call them legally or text them legally 8 hours later. You can have our automation start converting on them. But here's the thing, coming back to Casey's question, it's on the platform and it's on the method that they prefer, because they were on Facebook. So now you're messaging them through Messenger. You're able to go and keep them on the platform, and Facebook will reward you for it, because what platforms don't like, they don't want you to take them away from the platform. So businesses out there, entrepreneurs, owners, marketers, okay, know the rules, know what these platforms want. They don't want you taking their users outside of their platform and converting outside. They'd rather you keep them there. And those users prefer that too. It's a huge mistake, right? That one huge mistake that customers we have when we first engage with them, or prospects or businesses, is that they set up their dialers, they set up 5-9 with the strategy of everyone wants my calls. Well, guess what? Many of the prospects or the leads you're buying, they don't want phone calls. Hello?
It's about delivering a good experience for the clients. And that's the main purpose, because if you think about it, even if you have the best dialer, IVR, best system set up on the inside where it's most efficient for your team to contact clients whenever they want to contact clients and however they want to contact clients, it doesn't matter if the client doesn't want to be contacted that way. It's no point. It's a waste of time. You can have everything set up for phone calls, but then the client comes in and they're like, well, I wanted to talk on Facebook chat.
People see that on their data. They go and see that they've set it up. We're going to call this customer 4 or 5 times today for the next 5 days. 20 calls later, no contact, no pickup. They don't leave voicemails. The customer's not responded at all. And guess what they're doing? They're doing the exact same thing to hundreds, if not thousands of other people. It drives me crazy to go and say, like, hello, don't you see the data? 20 calls later, they're still not responding to you. What is compelling these companies, guys? Like, explain it to me like I'm stupid. Like, what is making them look at these dialers like 5-9 and saying, oh, we can dial 20 times faster than anybody else. Let's go call them 20 times and continue to not get engagement. What is causing that?
Probably a want to keep a phone room busy, right? And it does like a visual thing. Like they're like, it's self-fulfilling. They're like, oh, it's busy work. They're doing their busy work. Are they doing their busy work? It looks like they're doing their busy work. It looks like they're working, so they must be working. Meanwhile, they're calling and leaving the same voicemail 100 times a day, or not, and just blowing up people's phones for no reason with blank voicemails. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of like, I want to see people working. It makes me like, it's kind of like from a manager's perspective, maybe it's something like, I like to see people work under my supervision so I can show that, look, well, they're doing their job over there. So that's proof. But if we run out of numbers, then that's a problem. So what I should do is really just go to the bargain bin and grab as many numbers as I can, as many, as infinite. As an infinite number of numbers. Let me just grab them all. And then they can just keep calling. The dialers can keep going. And that way, if they're calling, that it's out of my hands. I'm doing we call it as many times as we can. Really, it's not our fault. We try calling him like infinite times to these people. No one's picking up the phone. It's something about insanity and doing things over and over again with the same result. It's like a saying like that, right? I think I'm catching it right. You probably want to think about doing a different thing to see if something else is bad. Maybe could work better for you guys.
So what you're saying, Stephen, essentially, they're more concerned about checking a box, completing a task, than they are about strategizing for the best result.
I've seen it before. I've seen it, probably going to see it again a couple dozen times, dealing with a lot of call centers. But yeah, you got it.
Would you say that's the same thing with you, Vic? Or do you think that there's another more devious reason?
I don't think it's devious. I think that people just, and I've said this in other podcasts, I said it to somebody who called me today, large company, over 150 million. And the question was, how do we get my dialer to integrate with your system so that if people don't pick up the phone after specific times, we could text them, or maybe we text them first and then we call them after. How many times do you call a person to determine that they're not going to convert via phone call? And they said, well, we just don't stop. So I said, would you say that after 20 calls kind of seems desperate at that point? Like it seems like it's like, if just imagine if you were dating, back in the day, because this person obviously is not dating anymore, right? Feels a little desperate at this point when you're just calling. Don't you think that maybe the better strategy is to figure out if we text them and email them or chat with them and come up with a better call to action and say, look, you don't have to talk to us. You can set your appointments automatically. You can do it yourself. Here's some content. Don't you think some of them might go, yeah, I'd rather do that. And then the ones that do want a phone call, they're going to call you. And I don't think it dawned on this person to even think about it in that way. They were looking at automation. They were looking at integration. They were looking at, how do I create these flows? And to Stephen's point, because my agents are call center reps, they've got to be busy. right? They've got to have the phone calls. You don't go and just say, okay, well, in order for me to be effective, I have to look busy. I think that's something that we're going to continue to see, which, is a good thing for businesses like ours that are trying to help people. But I really think it's not an insidious thing. I think it's just a matter of how they solve things. When you're trying to solve a problem at the level it was created, you're just going to go and basically regurgitate that problem. In my professional expertise, it makes a lot of sense to simply look at what Casey was talking about, the best user experience. If people don't want to talk to you on the phone and your goal is, I'm going to have to nurture this, then nurture them and don't talk to them on the phone. Give them a chance to talk to you, maybe call you. Because if everybody else is trying to call the customer or the prospect, and the thing that other people aren't doing is having those customers enthusiastic in calling in, maybe the strategy is to do what other people aren't doing.
Well, sure. I mean, you want to be going against the grain, right? Well, actually, maybe we should dive more into that, because I know that there's a fear to go against the grain for a reason, right? Like, we've all experienced watching those commercials from like the 70s and the 80s or whatever, and they're like, oh my gosh, what were they thinking? And they were trying to do something new and different. But with that comes risk, right? And so I don't think that there's an inherent sense of risk having, like, communicating with clients in the way that they want to be communicated on the platform they want to be communicated with. But there is sort of comfort in doing everything, like doing the same thing everybody else is doing, because especially in particular industries, that is what the client expects psychologically, right? That's what they're thinking is going to happen. And so if you come out of the box and you do something really, really different, doesn't it have to be like sort of very positively compelling versus, startling, like having something so different that you're like, oh, I don't know if these guys are professional. And a lot of our clients worry about like coming off as either too professional or too casual, and they're trying to find that happy medium.
Do this, and I think if you think this way, you're going to start building strategies that not only stand out, but it's also going to help you understand the customer better, and calibrating towards that gets you the best conversion. Work your strategy so that your dialers, your texting, your email, your communication, your whole experience is based out of making that user, that customer, that prospect's experience more enjoyable. That's your strategy. If you make it more enjoyable, you would get the best conversion, because people would actually pay through the nose to feel more comfortable, to enjoy what they're doing, to enjoy that experience. We know this because you have, let's say when you ride a plane, we know people will pay 10, 20, 30x to be in first class if they can afford it. And then there's business class, and there's premium economy, and there's economy. Sure, there's people who can't afford it and they'll stay in economy, but they also understand that. So you'll have those customers that say, we'll just get a phone call because it's easy, whatever. But there are people who will pay 10, 20, 30x to be in first class. You know why? Because to them, that is the standard that they're looking for. And I think if you add that piece of my tip and you go, I'm not going to go and try to hit the majority. I'm going to go after this smaller percentage of people. I'm going to be this company where the experience is the best. And that's my strategy for everyone. I'm fairly certain you'll catch the minority of people who will aspire to be at first class, even when they're economy, because everyone in economy still wants to be in first class.
First starting out as a caller many years ago, one of my strategies, which kind of coincides with what we're talking about right now, was to, instead of focusing on setting a appointment or like focusing on the goal in like a dead set needs to happen kind of a way. I knew the goal in the back of my mind, but I made it my own personal goal. And this kind of helped me get through the days we were working with. Improve the experience of my counterpart, the person I was talking with. I went through a free sheet creation program to track and calls from start to finish. I could kind of keep my own data sheet aside from what other people were doing in the call center, just as, kind of a go-getter type, which brought me to here. But what the whole point of all this is just to go through and say, what were they happier at the end of the call than they were at the beginning of the call, no matter where they started. I'd gauge them as a start saying, all right, well, this person picked up the phone. They're pretty neutral. Maybe they're a 5, just middle of the road. Hey, they pick up the phone, no emotion behind it. They pick up the phone. I'm going to try my best to make their experience better. I want to get them to a 6, a 7, an 8. If I get an appointment, hey, great. I found over hundreds of calls that every time I got someone to answer the phone, if I made this my goal rather than setting an appointment my goal, it helped me to focus on listening to that person and hearing. I started listening to cues within their voice. It wasn't really a goal to say a joke every call, but if you listen to somebody, you kind of get a feel of how are they doing this day? Maybe they're in a good mood. I became more, I think, emotionally aware of how that person was doing. And the resulting was more appointments are being set by me and the people who I kind of deployed this with on our team. I think that maybe we're onto something where focusing on this user experience is kind of like the digital or the channel automation's way of saying we're trying to achieve that through text messaging, through Facebook, through whatever platform they seem to come from.
I think that is a fantastically way. That was really well put. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah. I like that a lot.
That's really something to think about. That tip right there, nice little short. People should see that. That's a tip from an expert right there. Where were you in the beginning and where did you end? Because you could start really poorly. I really like that. That is omotenashi. That is you. That's Kaizen as well. Kaizen, Japanese principles of improving. You started off crappy and you've neutralized it. You get to neutral, then you get to professionals and experts could certainly take that advice from Stephen White here and go and say, how you're an expert? Because you can take somebody from negative to neutral to positive. Because anybody can go positive to positive. A real pro can take the negative one, get it to neutral, and eventually to positive. Yeah, very good. I agree with Casey. Excellent analogy.
I will say being on the other side of that experience where essentially it's to the point almost where you're rescuing them. They're starting off in dire straits, right? They're just listen, I just need this to get done. I've had a really bad experience. I don't want to be here talking, but it's something that I have to do. And so what Vic was saying about making the experience more enjoyable, right? We're not talking about necessarily giving them a margarita on the beach and then fanning them. We're just talking about they already are having to be on the phone tackling something that they may very well rather not be tackling at that time. And so if you can make their experience enjoyable talking to you by being very helpful, offering them solutions about what they need, not talking their ear off about a bunch of stuff they don't care about, which I think a lot of scripts need to be, mindful about when you're writing your scripts. I think that is the best way to get a customer being I didn't want to do that, but boy, they made it really easy for me. And I'm really happy they did.
The thing that is not written to and can't be written to any script, at least in the way that I've seen that's effective, is listening. It's infinitely unknown, right? Every day you can do anything with your day. You could wake up, go directly out your front door, run into the middle of the street and start singing the national anthem, right? Infinite opportunity. You don't do infinite opportunity. You do exactly what you're supposed to do. In a script, when you're talking to somebody, you have a goal in mind, and we want to try to follow that script. There's no way to train for infinite possibility with a script. You can guide, you can give them an option that you believe will be the best chance for them to have a success. But listening to your counterpart and then being able to calibrate the conversation based on what that person is saying is something that almost an untrainable skill. You can find people with this skill and hopefully kind of guide them on that path, but it's very difficult to train on.
Item as well that a lot of business owners and leaders can learn from is asking this question: who are we? What is our brand? You're trying to calibrate your dialer, you're trying to calibrate your text, your conversion, but who are you? Are you Nordstrom, or are you J.C. Penney, or are you Louis Vuitton? I hear this a lot from home services and companies. They go, oh, we're not the cheapest, we're definitely the best, blah, blah, blah. And we go, okay, so you're Louis Vuitton, you're Nordstrom. But then you test their experience, it's nah, you're more like Sears that's trying to go out of business. You know what I mean? You're just trying to sell to everyone. You're trying to call everyone. You're trying to put sales together. All you do when you text people is do you want to do business with me? Do you want to do business with me? We got a sale. We got a sale. We got a sale. We got a sale. This doesn't feel at all like you're Louis Vuitton. It feels like I'm in a budget store. You know what I mean? Because all I hear is promos, sales, do this now. And I asked some of the business owners, like, do you know who you are? Do you know what your brand is? Because it seems like that's what you're trying to be, but your experience is right down here. You're trying to say that your experience is right here, and maybe that is true. Like, well, once you become a customer, how do people know if they start off down here? You almost want to go and say, let's raise the bar on the customer experience so that even when you're not even the customer, it's so high that people aspire to be your customer if you really are not the cheapest and you're really the best at what you do. Don't give us this bullshit where it's like, oh, we're not the cheapest and we're definitely the best, but then you go and fill out a form, connect with them, and they call you 20 times and hound you with 15 text messages from the same other platforms that say, are you ready to go and set an appointment? Are you ready to buy something? Are you ready to set an appointment? Oh, we got a sale right here. It's really terrible. So I think knowing who you are and then maybe at that point looking at that user experience, as Casey pointed out, they started this, this podcast, is let's look at that. Let's experience it for themselves. It's even a good question to business owners out there. Here's a question. If you were a customer in your system, just put yourself in the 5-9 system, put yourself on Lead Perfection, on Market Shop, on i360, all our partners, put yourself as a lead in there and don't put your real name, and then experience that whole wave of bombardment of calls, texts, emails, right? Voicemails that you get. And then go and say, wow, yeah, this is really excellent experience. I mean, just put yourself in the position of your customers and then be honest at the end of the 2, 3, 4, maybe week and go, yeah, that's really what I want. I really prefer that. I really do prefer 20 calls, 15 texts, 5 emails, and all just go and say, please, I want to earn your business. I want to earn your business. I want to earn your business. Here's a sale. Here's a promotion. And then go and say,
It's definitely important to, I think you bring up a good point, and it's something that I don't think people consider a lot when they're thinking about their company and their brand, like you mentioned. I know before we were working with as one, like it was such a focus. I think a lot of companies kind of lose that focus when they start talking about conversion. It's just like harder, faster, more, go, go, go. And it's just like, if you take just a step back and look at the strategy, there's probably always going to be a misalignment with like a calling strategy and like an executive idea of what that brand is. So I agree. It's hugely beneficial to experience what your brand is giving, that experience that they're giving to folks out there.
Well, your CEOs or executive phone numbers in on their behalf and let them experience it and see if they like it. No, don't really. I'm not encouraging that behavior.
It's so weird how they come to us and they say, oh, you're experts. We've seen your podcast. And then we go, okay, yeah, we'll meet with you at this day and time. They set appointments with us, right, to go and do this discovery. And then we do our due diligence. We put our names into their system. We do this like secret shopper thing. And then we go and like, yeah, they're definitely not the Louis Vuitton or the Four Seasons or even Nordstrom when it comes to the experience. They're definitely more like Payless or Walmart, you know what I mean? And then we go and ask them like, hey, this is what we experienced. And then they're like, what was wrong with that? And I go, I don't know, because if you don't understand that that's wrong to call you 24 times in like 4 days and call me like 6 times in 1 day and not leave a voicemail, I'll respond to the call and I'll say, I'm unavailable. And that number isn't text enabled. And then I'll finally call them because I'm testing their call center. And I say, I'm in a meeting right now. Could you text me some information? The person says, yeah, I'd rather do it on the phone. And then we learn it's because you don't even trust them to go be on text. What are you trying? Like, that's your brand. You don't trust your agents. They know nothing other than just phoning somebody. You don't give them a choice, or you don't give them any sort of ability to have any feedback to tell you, like, I've called this customer literally 24 times in the last 4 days. You don't train them to write emails or to even use the platform to monitor the text in the emails. What I get is this. I really want to just have boiler room telemarketers, and I want to deliver the poorest level of experience because my goal is the highest conversion.
I want to put a bullet point on this as well. Because that is so freaking right. And I know it's going to be tempting to be like, oh yeah, I remember this person doing that, but don't say nothing, right? Why is it that you're giving people garbage microphones, garbage PCs, and things that, like, literally, even if they did their absolute best in the call center world, or like Vic was saying, restricting them to only do like 2 things and they can't do anything else, that is lowering your prospect's experience. Because they call in, they're like, on a Friday, I'm like, I don't know what you're saying, so obviously I'm not going to buy from you. I have absolutely no clue. Or they're like, oh, sorry, my system is slow. So even if I do want to interact with them, I'm like, okay, well, now I'm waiting 20 minutes for their freaking Think client to load or whatever the heck kind of system they got set up. They're fake computers.
Which brings me to a question for Steven and for you, Casey, is the call center environment kind of tells you what kind of service you're going to get. I've seen call centers where we have fresh fruit. They've got really good coffee, freshly brewed, drip coffee. They drink alkaline water, nice environment. They have to wear suits and dress nice. The chairs, are good. The headsets are really comfortable. And you got classical music playing in the background. And then you go to the call centers where there's like Kiss FM is like in the background. JoJo and the radio, it's like blasting, Shania Twain. And then you've got like Folgers old, day-old coffee. Headsets are falling apart. And then there's got these cheesy effing motivational, to me, that takes the cake. Always be closing and all of that stuff. And then you go in and it's people that are like the saddest people you'll see.
Don't forget about all of the procedures printed out and taped all over everybody's things. And there's no way that anyone who's not an insane person could actually read all the procedures. Like, it looks like one of those telephone poles after, like, everybody's had a garage sale on a popular weekend. Like, there's just extra staples and torn papers.
You see people complain about call centers, and it's harder to do that. It was delivering your script, who's delivering the service. And then they treat the call center staff like they're dirt. You know what I mean? Like, you just go in, like, okay, fine, you can't pay top dollar. Then invest in more comfortable seats, better headsets, like Casey was talking, so you don't sound like sound like Bane, from Batman. Give them snacks that they'll feel healthy about. Fruits, give them some energy, better coffee, water. Make them in an environment that's comfortable. Like, they go like, you know what? I live in a shitty apartment, but when I come to my office, it's like, man, I just love being in the office. You know what I mean? I feel important. I feel great. They've got snacks in there. I'm well fed, or I have energy. I think that's infinitely cheaper, and some people might even say, a lot of people might go, okay, it's $1 or $2 less than what other competitors are, but over here, I feel great. What do you guys think?
The cost for doing that, for just investing in an improved call center, would be far cheaper than the constant revolving door of call center reps, training, HR fees that comes with having a poorly established call center with a bad company culture.
And if your call center is a work from home crew, that doesn't mean that they also get neglected, right? It's so easy to make their life better by giving them things in the best way that you can. Send them little things in the mail, or make sure that they have good software to work with. Check in with them, saying hi, send them a joke. You can actually really increase morale, treating them like a human being. That's it. That's what a lot of people require. I mean, the bar is so low. You just treat them nicely, and you say, hey, I appreciate you every now and again. That's enough for most people.
So my wife also works for a call center. I'm not just like a family of call centers, I swear. It's like, I have kids that grow up in call center environments and things like that. It's not my plan, everybody. But,
and your grandpa and your grandpa's grandpa.
Yeah. I came from a long line of call center agents. My grandpappy was a call center agent, and his grandpappy, and we called. They had use the little dingy-dongy and dang-a-dong to people all over America. You use Telegram to convert on our leads. The cool things that they do is just like provide lots of like company swag for things like just like mugs and stuff. And it was like throughout her experience, it was, I dislike this place and it's difficult. And like, although it is challenging for me to work here and it caused me a lot of anxiety, gosh darn, they really care about us. She really felt cared about the whole time. So it was like difficult. They're just they care about me so much here. And when you feel that, it's harder to leave.
Here's a tip for all those people who want to go and calibrate their bonus systems for salespeople, inside sales, call centers, right? Instead of incentivizing them on the goal, which is setting appointments, getting a sale, incentivize them on their reviews or reputation. I think if you tested that and you go, how many good reviews did you get? How many people said 5 out of 5 stars at the end of this phone call? I was happy. I would say you'd get to your goal. You'd still have people set appointments, make sales. But the additional layer would be that they would have the goal of making that customer happy. Because undoubtedly, the majority of the ones that don't convert will remember that agent. They'll go, okay, I couldn't close this one right now, but that person's service was so effing good. I'm going to reach out, or I'm going to go and tell that person, you did an excellent job. And I think if you incentivize that instead, all your agents would just move towards omotenashi, or better experience, and they would have bragging rights. Do you hear that customer? She was just like, you are so good. You're a great listener. I just made myself $100. You know what I mean? And they would do that on every call, every single one. They wouldn't go like, oh, I'll cherry pick, this effing lead source sucks. They wouldn't care. They would just care about, like, I'm getting bonus as soon as this person says.
Getting bonus to be complimented. They're getting paid to get a compliment from somebody. I don't know about you, that's like a double win.
If somebody could make that happen and come into our podcast and you tell us, look, we will pay you to come to our podcast to go and share your thoughts, because I think, to me, that is an amazing way of incentivizing call center agents, right? Incentivize your call center agents to provide the very best user experience. And if you can quantify that, I think I would bet money that you'd still get to your set goals, whether it's sales or appointments or whatever it is that you're trying to sell using your call center. It just makes a lot of sense.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for us today. And whether you love or hate what we talked about today, we do want to hear from you. And so comment or shoot us an email at hello@cheddleautomation.com. Also, please consider subscribing to the podcast and continue getting tips on marketing and call centers. As always, we'd love it if you'd keep that conversion high.